The teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, the great teacher inspires. Welcome to An Academy, India's largest learning platform. An Academy is one of the best and fastest growing learning platform. It provides live sessions with the best educators. Believe me, the best educators of the country. Along with this, live practice questions with educators where you can practice different questions directly with the educators. Also, weekly quizzes and live doubt clearings where you can test yourself. Batch and courses for class 9 to 12 by top educators on the platforms where total syllabus is covered. The courses are available for almost all these subjects. Now, how to join An Academy subscription plan? Visit www.unacademy.com. What are the advantages of joining An Academy? You get access to coursework from anywhere at any time. Combination of structure and freedom, effective time management, asynchronous discussions with classmates, immediate feedbacks on test, preferred pace in learning, sample paper solving. And this is affordable for everyone. You can go to 1 month, 3 month, 6 month or 12-month subscription. Use the code LE01 to get 10% discount. Welcome to An Academy. This is CBSE Class 10th Social Science. Most important questions for board exams. And these important questions are on the basis of repetition of the questions time and again in the board exams. The first one is, why had the Indian government put a barrier to foreign trade and foreign investment after independence? State any one reason. So what could have happened? The government would have allowed the foreign companies to just come in India, in the country, and set up their business. Likewise, the things which are going on now, like FDIs, foreign direct investment, etc. But the government choose not to do it. What is the reason? The Indian government put a barrier, that is a stoppage, to trade and foreign investment after independence to protect the producers within the country from foreign competition. Because when we got the independence, our farmers, our industries, they were just starting. That means because of the turmoil which we had for over 200 years because of the regime of British. So we were not very good or very advanced in the field of science or agriculture, industry, Vinirman. So government choose to prosper or to allow them, the Indian industries, Indian farmers, to prosper and make the product or make their mark, so they are well enough equipped to compete with the foreign material or foreign goods. That's why they put the barrier. Why did Mahatma Gandhi ji decide to launch a nationwide satyagraha against the proposed Rowlatt Act? Explain any 3 reasons. So this question is also repeated again and again. Mahatma Gandhi ji decided to launch this nationwide satyagraha against the proposed Rowlatt Act. To trade, Rowlatt Act has been hurriedly passed through the Imperial Legislative Council despite the united opposition of the Indian members. That is, the Indian members, they don't want this act because this act was really difficult or dreadful for the people of the country, and especially those who are fighting for the independence and working for the poor. It gave the government enormous power to repress political activities. Any political activity or party which wants to ask questions or do something like protest or demand their rights to the government now has enormous power to repress them, oppress them, and allowed detention of political prisoners without trial for 2 years. So if someone is taken to jail or someone is detained, he or she can be imprisoned for or can be put behind the bars for 2 years without any trial, no trial whatsoever. So this was an unjust law for the country, for the people of the country, and especially those who are fighting for India to get independence and to get rights that they deserve. The struggle of the Nepali people is a source of inspiration to Democrats all over the world. Support the statement. Now, this is the struggle and which comes under the popular struggle. There are certain struggles all over the world, and some struggles are seen as the source of inspiration for others also. So the struggle of Nepali people is a source of inspiration to Democrats all over the world, all across the globe. The autocratic decision of King Gyanendra. So he took a decision in February 2015, which resulted in a protest by political parties. Actually, all the political parties, they came together along with lakhs of people on the street. So political parties, they have diverse ideology. They joined together, means political party 1, political party 2, they have different ideology. They also came together and they formed an alliance against the Gyanendra and defied the curfew. The leaders rejected the half-hearted concessions by the king, because after this happened, when first Gyanendra saw that people are coming and they are asking, people are coming on the street and the political parties have joined hand and they're asking for proper democracy. So he gave some sort of you can say half-hearted concessions to them. But people of Nepal were not ready to take it. Ultimately, the king was compelled to concede all the 3 major demands which were made by the protesters. Therefore, the struggle of Nepalis, or you can say Nepal, is known as the second movement for democracy, because it became a source of inspiration to Democrats all over the world. Describe the conditions in which markets do not work in a fair manner. So the conditions in which the markets do not work in fair manner, first is when producers are few and powerful. Only few producers are there and they are quite powerful. So there is no one who is going to answer or question them, because if he does something to you, what will you do? He is so powerful. When consumers purchase in small amounts, if you just take very few amount, then the market will be unfair to you. Sometimes when consumers are scattered, if the consumer, you have been cheated by him, myself being cheated by him, or he has done some unfair practices with me, and we don't know each other, we are scattered, and we even don't want to come together and fight against what he is doing, against his wrongdoing. When large companies have monopoly in production of goods, as they have huge wealth and can manipulate the market in various ways. So the big companies, big giant companies, they have crores of revenue. And sometimes the government also, they give a lot of chanda, etc. So government is also making policies such that this company is benefited. And even if something comes under light or suspicion that the company is doing something wrong, the nexus of these two institutions, they make it very difficult to make this company pay for what they are being doing. So because of the power and the monopoly and the money, sometimes the market do not work in fair manner. Passing on false information through media and other sources to attract consumers. Because what happens? There are marketing people. They want to sell. They want to sell product at any cost. They don't care whether the person who is involved or the consumer who is giving money, whether he is benefited or not. Okay, I'll give an example of a cream. This is a cream to become fairer. There is no cream like that. But people who are, because India is normally the wettish complexion people are here. So a lot of people, they buy this cream, and because they cannot say anyone that I have taken this cream to make myself fair. And this is how they cheat people. This company, they say in 7 days, you will be a white man. And this doesn't happen. In recent years, how our markets have been transformed. Explain with examples. This is also repeated multiple times. So transformation of our markets, there is a wide choice of goods now and services. Before us, if we go as a consumer to the market, we have for the same stuff, we have multiple options. There are option number 1, option number 2, option number 3. So the latest models of digital cameras, mobile phones, television made by leading manufacturers, it may be LG, it may be Panasonic, it may be Toshiba, any name you take, they offer this, of the world are within our reach. So not even the local brands, but all the international brands are in front of us with affordable prices. Every season, new model of automobiles can be seen on Indian roads. And the Indian bike vehicles produced by the top companies of the world, not even the automobiles, you can take any product, any product whatsoever. So we see new launch, new model of mobile, automobiles, or various other electronic gadgets and related items. A similar explosion of brands can be seen for many other goods, from the shirts to television to processed fruit juice. So as I was saying, you can take any item that as a consumer we use. We have seen that there is enough competition, and because of the competition and because of the demand of the consumer, we are able to get our products in very reasonable price and of good quality. Why is conservation of mineral resources essential? Explain any three methods to conserve them. So first of all, these minerals, let me tell you that they comes under non-renewable resources. But that doesn't mean they will not reproduce or they will not replenish. But it will take thousands, hundreds, thousands and lakhs of years for different type of minerals to be formed. And that will be a huge time. If I use it today, I have to wait this number of years to again get it back, or the prakriti or the nature to make it again. So the reason for conservation becomes very important. The strong dependence of industry and agriculture upon these minerals. The minerals are limited in number, they are limited in amount, we know it. And all the industries and agriculture, they, in direct way or indirect way, they all are dependent on these minerals. So if we don't conserve them, how are our industry and agriculture going to run? The process of mineral formation is slow. As I just suggested, it will take years and years for any mineral to replenish, to come again, to be formed again. They are non-renewable. As I said, they are non-renewable. That doesn't mean the nature cannot renew it. But the problem is, it will take years and years to make them. And what are there are other reasons also. I have just one more things to say. The first, they are exhaustible. Limited numbers are there. We know that they are limited. And minerals, they don't have just one use. See, if I make iron, or an industry make iron, now this iron is not used directly, or it may be used directly, but it is used by all other industries. So this is actually a feeder industry. Iron is a feeder industry to all other industry. So these minerals have manifold uses, and the growth of industrialization has accelerated the extraction of minerals. Say X amount was extracted earlier. Now X to the power n is extracted now, because the industrialization is expanding. And how can we conserve it? We can conserve it by making an efficient use of them. The only thing is that you know that you have, say, 100 rupees in your pocket and you have to go for 30 days. So how to spend this? Judiciously. Spend 10 for one day, wait for 5 days, spend 10 another day. If you want, you can, in one day only, you can spend 100 rupees. Then what you are going to do for 29 other day. That is the same example you can take here. And using recyclable sources of energy whenever possible. And also, let me tell you, you can go for the ghair paramparagat sources, that is the renewable sources of energy. So let me come again and discuss again. That is, the method to conserve is minerals should be used in planned, sustainable manner. That is, we don't want this to be finished by us. We want it for our kid. We want it for our kids, like this. Improved technology need to be constantly evolved to allow the use of low grade or at low cost. That means whatever minerals are there which we think that they are not usable, there needs to be some technology, because we all have technology in our mind. We can discover, we can invent. So these low grade and low, not generally used minerals should also be employed and used. Recycling of metal using scrap metals can be done, as we suggested here also. Recycling and reuse is always a good option. Wastage in the mining and processing should be minimized. See, if you buy any vegetable, see, it is say 1 kg. When your mother clears it for making food, it will be not more than 300 grams. Why? Because this 700 grams has gone in cleaning. You cannot eat all the parts. There are some last parts you have to remove. And this 700 gram is a wastage. So this exactly what I'm saying here is, when we do mining and processing, there is a lot of mineral wastage is there. And this mineral wastage has to be, we need to minimize it, and we need to take care in a justifiable manner and in a planned manner. Describe any 5 major functions of political parties. If you take example of India, we have multiple parties. Some parties are national level parties, some parties are state level parties, and these parties only when they win, they make the sarkar, the government at the state level, state government, and the central, that is the union government. So what are the major functions of these political parties? Like the BJPs we have, the Congress we have, INC, the CPI we have, the Samajwadi Party, all the other parties like this. So the functions of political parties is, first of all, they contest elections. Their main thing is to win elections and to get the office, hold of the office. They put forward policies and programs in terms of their manifesto or their vichar that we are going to do this if you elect us. So they put for policies and programs. And parties play a decisive role in making laws, because party, once they are in power, they are making laws. Even if they are not in power, they are in opposition, they are influencing, because they may be the part of the legislature. So that is how they play a very decisive role in making laws. Parties form and run the government. So as I said, BJP to 2014, 2019, they won the election, and now they have made the sarkar, central government is BJP, mainly BJP. So they form and run the government. Defeated party in the election play its role of opposition to the parties in power. Generally what we see now that the opposition has no role, but actually our framers of constitution, they have decided that this will be our parliament, or you can say legislature, and here will be the Satta Paksh, that is the governing or governance or governing body, which is the government, and the others will be the opposition. So if the government does something here and there, the opposition always is to look after and to viroध, protest, and to show the government, tell the government what they are doing wrong. Their wrongdoings can be surfaced by the opposition. These parties shape public opinion. Now when the BJP says that we will make Ram Mandir, or we'll say CAA and NRC will come with these. So that is what, when they came into election, this is what they said. So they actually made the public opinion. So whosoever in India, they want CAA, NRC and the Ram Mandir and others, they voted for BJP. Say Congress, INC, when they came in the election for 2019, they say we have a Nyaya Yojana. That is Nyaya Yojana, that some amount, say 5,000 rupees. This amount will be given per month to every individual. That is what the idea was. But people just disregarded that. They didn't accept that, and they chose BJP. This is how parties shape their public opinion. Means public are opinionated by what the parties offer them. But parties provide people access to government machinery and welfare schemes. So now, see, going to a bureaucrat, say an IAS, I cannot go to an IAS. It will be very difficult for me to meet the DM. But I can go to the corporator, local parshad. I can always go to him because he is my buddy. I know him. He is living just across my street. And then I can tell him that this is my problem, and now he can escalate. And it is always, a like of brotherhood, and they can work for you. So this is how parties provide help to access the government machinery like this, and welfare schemes. Any scheme being you can say government has given or announced, these people will help us to be in that scheme and take the advantage of that scheme. How do pressure groups and movement exert influence on politics? Explain with examples. So this has also come time and again. So pressure groups and movements, they exert influence on the politics in various ways. First is the pressure groups and the movements, they try to gain public support and sympathy for their goals and activities. For example, Project Tiger. I'm just taking an example. I don't know whether it is pressure group or movement, but if you take the Project Tiger, or you can say, let us take a proper one. That is the Narmada Bachao Andolan. Now this was a pressure group and a movement also. Now when it came, it actually gained support and sympathy for achieving that whatever is happening once that Sardar, Damodar Valley project was been done. So actually the NBA took the sympathy and support, and that is how people came to protest against. And once the dam was built, after that, whatever has to be compensated to them, it actually was done just because of the pressure from this NBA. They often organize protest activities, that is dharna, etc. And business group often employ professional lobbyists, that is the big people, that is Ambanis and Adanis. They will not go to the government and say, I want this or we want this. These Ambanis and Adanis they have money like anything. So they will do what? They will hire some agent or lobbyist, and they will ask the government to do this, make policy according to them, or whatever thing they want. Sometimes political parties grow out of movements. I'll take this first. Let me come here. The pressure group are either formed or led by the leaders in political parties. So all this, most of the Mazdoor unions, if you see Mazdoor Sangh, they all are having the backing of the major political parties. Even if you go to the college student union and different parties, they are backing these student or college unions or college, you can say the fronts. And political parties grow out of movements. We have seen this in Assam, we have seen this in Tamil Nadu, that the party which were fighting as a group or a pressure group movement. Let us take an example of Delhi also. We have seen that there was people organized against the corruption, and finally the Aam Aadmi Party was born. In most cases, the relationship between parties and pressure groups is not so direct. The place where the Indian National Congress session was held in 1920. So what is the name of that place? It is Kolkata. Calcutta at that time it was called. So this is the place. It's actually the capital of our state, West Bengal. Why is the supervision of the functioning of formal sources of loans necessary? See, there are different type of loans. Some from formal sector, some from informal sector. So these are kind of loans, formal and informal loans. Formal loans, let me give you an example. If you go to a landlord and take money, that is informal sector. Money lenders, your friend or anybody else, relatives, these are informal. But if you go to a bank, commercial or cooperative bank, or a bank which has some government backing or government sanctity, these are the formal sources. So the supervision of formal sources of loan is necessary. The reason being, so that the targeted people for whom specific loans have been designed can avail such loan. That is, if this loan has been approved for the farmers, the bank should not give the loan to anyone else, like the people who are already having money, or friend of bank manager, in order to check the creditworthiness of prospective clients to minimize default. So if anyone who is coming, there has to be some rules and regulation that has to be followed. Otherwise, everyone would come, take the loan, and he would vanish. So that the appropriate rate of interest are charged. That is, the rate of interest should not be more than what is prescribed, and there should not be any hidden charges. In order that the targeted economic activity get a boost, because this is loan is given only, or loan is the criteria of actually enhancing the economic activity, so that the banks and other lending institutions have adequate resources to meet their lending objectives. So these are the reason why the supervision is necessary for formal sectors. The Ho Chi Minh Trail became advantageous to Vietnamese in the war against the United States. Support the statement with arguments. So this has come multiple times. First, let me show you the path we are discussing, or trail we are discussing. So this is the path we are interested in, right? This is the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Vietnam. So what happened here? Ho Chi Minh Trail, this was a network of roads and footpaths, and most of the trail was in Laos. It's actually Laos, but we call it as Lao, and Cambodia. It was used by the Vietnamese in their war against the United States or US forces. This trail was used to transport goods and people from North Vietnam to South Vietnam, and this was used for the quick movement of forces from one war front to another war front. And this was the basic route employed to supply food, arms, ammunitions to the soldiers. It had support bases and also the hospitals on the way. So Vietnamese made use of their limited resources in an effective way in the struggle against the imperialistic forces. Ho Chi Minh Trail is an example for that. Since this trail or this path was only known, it was quite, you can say secluded, or you can say covered. So this was not, the US forces were not used to this kind of path moving around, and they were not also well versed with this area. So these people were knowing this area, and they know how this work. That is why they were over to overcome the strong forces like United States soldiers and forces here. Suggest any 3 steps to minimize the environmental degradation caused by the industrial development in India. So this is also coming multiple times. See, this is the problems we are having because of the industrial pollution. See, every country needs industries because this is the basic secondary sector. We need industry for the economy. We need them for the employment. There are so many things. These industries are important for us. But once the industries are being established, they pollute. And since they pollute, they degrade the environment. And this environment is where we live. So they cause air pollution, they cause water pollution, they cause soil degradation. Soil degradation means the soil is now not fertile because of these wastes, mostly the toxic waste, and of course the noise pollution. So there are certain ways or steps to minimize this environmental degradation caused by the industrial development in India, or you can say any developing country. First is minimizing the use of water for procuring, or you can say reusing and recycling it. That is, water is used everywhere. All of the industries, they use this water. Now, this water is once used, if this is an industry, the once water is used, it is just being thrown out, right, without being treated. So if this water is treated again and again, like it can be reused and recycled, then there are no number of ways or successive stages this can be used, rather than just sending them at some outlet, throwing them in the stream or the river. And especially the hot water, there are certain thermal plants, etc., who are actually sending or leaving this water to the aquatic environment. And this water is so hot that the aquatic and animals, aquatic flora and fauna could not prosper. So first is minimizing the water, recycling and reusing it. Second is harvesting of rainwater can be done to meet the water requirement. So there are certain ways of harvesting the rainwater, that is the rooftop also, and there are certain way. So water is important. And then the treating hot water and effluent before releasing them in rivers and ponds. That's what I was talking about. That there are certain industries which actually send or throw it to the aquatic area. That is, it can be a dump, it can be a stream or a pond or a lake, but the hot water, it spoils the environment, aquatic environment. And there are other ways also to minimize the environmental degradation. That is the waste, the toxic waste which are coming out of the industries should be treated. It should be treated, and the regulation, the industries should follow the strict regulations and rules of the government, that how or what waste are allowed to be thrown away, and if it is toxic, they have to be treated properly. And then the third thing is that the industries should do something to stop all these kind of pollution, whether it be noise pollution or air pollution. This air pollution can be minimized so that there can be filter somewhere here. So all the sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, because the carbon dioxide is increasing the earth temperature, creating the greenhouse effect. So all these things can be done. So there are multiple ways you can answer. Which three challenges do you feel are being faced by political parties in India? Give your opinion. So political parties of India, as I said, we have major right now, the BJP, the topmost party, Indian National Congress, then we have Samajwadi Party, TMC, the AIADMK, and DMK, like this. There are so many parties we have, CPI, to name a few. Now, what is the thing, or what are the scenario inside the political parties, or you can say challenges or situation? Now, first of all is the lack of internal democracy. The political parties, they don't have internal democracy by themselves. Since India is a democracy, but these parties don't have internal democracies. What does that mean? All over the world, there is a tendency of political parties towards the concentration of power in one or few leaders of the top. That is, only one or two or few leaders are only known. People know them, and the parties is revolving around them only. There is no democracy. They are the, you can say, sole decision maker, and sole they are actually, the party is proprietary to them. Parties do not keep membership registered. They don't have any membership register like this number of people are working for us, like that. They do not conduct internal elections regularly. That is, those people who are at the top, who are their bhai bhatijas, their relatives, etc., they always win the election, or they don't have election, they are already nominated. like the general secretary, like the treasurer, etc. Ordinary members of the party do not have sufficient information as to what happens inside the party. See, there is a political head here. Now there are people who are called karyakartas. They are working for them, but they are just working. Whatever is going on with them here, what are decision making, what are the political party policies, these people are not knowing it, and they are not being told at all. Second thing which comes is the no transparency, that is opaqueness, no transparency. That means what? Since the political parties, most political parties do not practice open and transparent procedure for their functioning. They do it the way they want, or their leaders, whatever they want. So these are very few ways. There are very few ways for an ordinary worker to rise to the top in the party. Means only those people, those party members who have some connections or who are from the party leaders itself, from the family, they rise to that top position. Otherwise, the karyakartas will remain karyakartas. Those who happen to be the leaders are in a position of unfair advantage of famous people close to them, or even their family member. That is, the leaders, they only take care of their connections and those people who are working for them, like vicinity. In many parties, the top position are always controlled by the members of one family. For example, the Indian National Congress party, and the Ram Vilas Sahab's party, all these parties, or the Lalu Prasad Yadav party, all these parties, that is RJD, all these parties have only the family members at the top, and they give the tickets to their family members only when the election comes. Money and muscle power. Now, this is very important. Previous, if you go few years back, this was the major thing which, or you can say, I should not use this, was nuisance in our politics. So since parties are focused only on winning elections, because that is what they want satta, they want the power. So they tend to use shortcuts in order to gain power or to win elections. They tend to nominate those candidates who have or who can raise a lot of money. And rich people and companies who give funds to the party tend to have influence on the parties and decision on the party. So if some parties there, and some Adanis and Ambanis have given, say, 1,000 or 10,000 crores to them. Now these parties, they will work for them. They will try to work for them, or they will be inclined, because the chanda or the funds given by these people or parties is too much. So, and those people who are fielded or given tickets, they are often very rich, and they are having muscle power, like the Bahubali, we call it. Muscle power they have. So they have the chances to win the election by either hook or by crook. Why had the Indian government put barriers to foreign trade and foreign investment after independence? Analyze the reasons. So this question we have already done, and this is repeated. So the basic thing, I'll just go, this answer is somewhat different, So I just tried to give a different type of answer. For example, the removal of barriers. Once the independence we got, it was a good idea that, okay, bring the foreign good companies, bring the FDI, foreign direct investment, and make our economy better and make our market better. But the government did not think so, and the reason was correct. Why? Because the removal of barriers for foreign trade and foreign investment, see, barriers to foreign trade and foreign investment were partially removed. Why had the Indian government put barriers? And analyze the reasons. First is that goods could be improved and exported easily. Foreign companies could set up factories and office here. Opportunities for Indian producers to compete with producers around the globe. Now, this is the answer which you need to give when it comes to, because we already covered a question like this. So this question is saying that when the government, you can say the barrier were somewhat released, you can say. So when they removed certain kind of barriers, but after independence, the basic reason was that our farmers and our industrialists, first of all, we don't have industrialists that much. So the farmers and industrialists, first of all, we wanted them to gain a momentum. We want our economy to gain momentum, to the farmers or the industrialists or the udyog to make certain stuff or goods for their country, so that the country may use and the economy is good. Then only we will allow the foreign people to come here. Otherwise, they will face unnecessary competition. And this answer you are going to give when there is the question being asked for partial removal of barrier and foreign trade and investment. So that is how, if you remove the barriers, this is the answer which we are going to add with the previous answers we discussed. Okay, if you remember, we already discussed this question. Explain the importance of conservation of minerals. Highlight any three measures to conserve them. Again, this question is repeated multiple number of times. So, importance of conservation of minerals. First is minerals or khanij are being rapidly consumed, which take millions of years to create or concentrate. Means if the mineral we are using, this has not come today. This is built or this is being made or formed in years, long back. The process has started, and it needs a proper temperature, pressure, condition, environment like this. And mineral resources are finite and non-renewable. That is, we know the matra, we know the say the amount. We know that this mineral is of this number of amount we have, and they are non-renewable. Non-renewable means once they are finished, the prakriti or the nature is not ready to renew its right now. Okay, it will take a million of years. Continued extraction of ores lead to the increasing cost, or as mineral extraction comes from greater depths along with the decreasing quality. So since we are actually using them or consuming them in a higher rate than the nature could produce these mineral, so we were going like this, now we are going like this, so we are going deeper and deeper, and we are not getting that much of good quality minerals. So what are the way to or measures to conserve them? First is it should be used in a planned sustainable manner. That is, right now we should need it for later time also, for our kids like this. And the good technology, so that all the low grade ores which we generally don't use, this should be bring to the market and use. Some of the metals are recyclables, we can recycle them. And scrap of metal, once metal is used, now the scrap like the automobiles, etc., can be used for some other purpose. So it can be substitute for some other purpose. So what we said just now, to minimize the use of minerals which are likely to be depleted and exhausted, that we know that this is the amount and it is going to be depleted just sooner. Minimize the use of jewelry to conserve scarce minerals, and recycle and reuse minerals and glasses. Buy durable products that last long. Buy efficient vehicles, repair and use bicycles, use recyclable utensils. So these are the answers you can add, but you should stick to this. This is just an idea to give that what we have. The next question is, describe the popular struggle of Bolivia. Now, Bolivia is a country in South America. Here is the location. You must know where it is. So this is the place where in South America we have Bolivia, and this is the map of the Bolivia, and these are one of the picture of the Bolivian struggle. So this is called a popular struggle, and this took place in the city of Cochabamba. Where? Cochabamba. When the World Bank pressurized the government to give up its control of municipal water supply to the city, consequently the rights were sold to the multinational company. Because the Bolivian government, it was in debt. It was in a lot of debt. It has taken a lot of money from the World Bank. So World Bank said, okay, now you do what? You leave this municipal water supply and give it to multinational companies, so that they can make money, we can make money. We can get some money from you, because you have taken a lot of debt from us, loan from us. So this MNC now, when it came, MNC, the main thing is to make profit. So the company immediately increased the price of water by 4-fold, which led to the monthly bill of rupees 1,000 in a country where the average income is just 5,000 rupees. Now 5,000 rupees someone is earning, and the bill he or she has to pay for water is 1,000. The situation was grim, and this was the starting of the protest. So this resulted in a popular protest, as we see here. An alliance of labor, everyone joined hand. Labor, human rights, community leaders, they organized a 4-day general strike. The government was ready to negotiate first, and the movement was called off, but nothing happened. No significant action was taken, and the strike began again in the month of February, and the police restored to brutal repression, means beating people. Strikes were followed again. It came in the month of April, and martial law, that is the army law, was imposed. Now the power of the people eventually forced the officials of the MNC to run out of the city of Cochabamba. and made the government agree to all the demands of the protesters. Therefore, the protest of these people, they bore fruit, and contract with the MNC were scrapped, or you can say cancelled, and the water supply was restored to the old municipality rates. Political parties are necessary condition for a democracy. Analyze the statement with examples. See, the political parties, as I suggested earlier also in the previous question, like the BJPs, like the Indian National Congress, like all these. So these parties are necessary condition for a democracy. Without political parties, the democracies cannot exist. If we do not have a political party, in such a situation, every candidate in election will be independent, right? Like, जिसे हम कहते हैं कि it's independent, स्वतंत्र, everyone will be स्वतंत्र and independent. So there will be no policy, there will be no vichardhara, there will be no, you can say, the manifesto of a collective people. So no one will be able to make any promises to the people about any major policy changes. So the government may be formed, but its unity will remain uncertain because everyone will be independent. So elected representative will be accountable to their constituency for what do they in their locality, but no one will be responsible for how the country will run. Because ultimately the country, whatever small pockets we are talking about, like the, say, a Vidhayak region or a corporator region, actually we are talking about a country. So the role of opposition party in democracy necessitates the existence of political parties. And as society become large and complex, they also need some agencies to gather different views on different issues and to present these to the government. That is why political parties are needed. And the problem of bad politics can be solved by more and more better politics. Describe the impact of globalization on Indian economy with examples. Now this question will come again and again. We have already seen this has come, and this will come again. Why? Because this is repeated again and again. So the globalization has impacted Indian economy. First of all, the increase in the foreign investment, that is the foreign investment companies are coming here and they are investing here. Over the past 20 years, the foreign investment has increased, and the emergence of Indian companies as multinational, several of the top companies, Indian companies like the Tata Motors, Infosys, Ranbaxy, they have been able to get benefit from the increased competition created as a result of the globalization and the creation of new opportunities. Globalization has created new opportunities for Indian companies, particularly the service provided company or these companies which are providing services, for example, IT, and the creation of new jobs for those who are in the era of globalization. This has created new jobs for people of the country and has helped in reducing the unemployment, berozgari rate to a certain extent. A host of services like the data entry, accounting, administrative tasks, engineering are now being done cheaply in India. So if you want to have a figure, kindly make a figure that will give an impact to the examiner. That is increased trade, greater choices of goods, greater competition because of the lower prices, economies of scale, that is more efficient production, and increased capital and labor mobility. Then tax avoidance. These are some things, you can say in the darker or shady side. What does it mean? It means these are the drawbacks, that tax avoidance is easier now. Structural employment for shifting sectors is the major concern, and the monopoly power of multinational big companies. They have all the stake and they do whatever they decide because of the money and the power they have. Describe the process of unification of Italy, and this also has come many times. So first let me show you that this is the Italy part, right? Italy is a country in Europe, and this is how this has changed. This is the Kingdom of Sardinia. This was Kingdom of Sardinia, and this part is added to the Sardinia, and this now was added to Italy, and now this added to Italy means phase wise, 1858, then 1859-60, then 1866, 1870, and finally the Papal States. And this is the independence and unification of Italy. I'll tell you one by one. So this is state-wise. Northern Italy was captured from Austria. Then this is given to France in return for support of bid of independence. And this is the Kingdom of Sardinia, as I just showed you, independent before unification. And here we have Venice captured from Austria, 1866. 1870, Papal States conquered and these are also added to Italy. And this is the southern Italy captured from Spain, 1860. So this is how it happened. I'll tell you one by one. The unification of Italy is the result of dedication, contribution, and effort of three great leaders. First was Mazzini, then Cavour, then Garibaldi. So during 1830s, Giuseppe Mazzini had tried to unite Italy. He formed a secret society called as Young Italy. But both the uprising in 1831 and 1848 actually failed miserably. Even the ruling elites also wanted a unified Italy, which would offer economic advantages and also political dominance. So the unification of Italy was a result of many wars. Chief Minister Cavour, as I suggested here, made a tactful diplomatic alliance with France and Sardinian Piedmont, succeeding in defeating the Austrian forces in 1859, as I just suggested here. A large number of armed volunteers under the leadership of Giuseppe Garibaldi joined the unification movement. In 1860, they marched to the South Italy and Kingdom of Two Sicily, succeeded to drive out the Spanish ruler with the help of local people. In 1861, Victor Emmanuel II was proclaimed as King of United Italy. Describe the role of different religious groups in the development of anti-colonial feelings in Vietnam. So Vietnam, we saw the one of the question there. So the role of religious groups in the development of anti-colonial feelings in Vietnam region played an important role in strengthening the colonial control. It also provided ways of resistance in Vietnam. So Vietnam's religious belief were a mixture of Buddhism, also Confucianism, and local practices also. So Christianity introduced was by French missionaries, and many religious movements were hostile to the Western presence. The revolt was led by officials at the imperial court, angered by the spread of Catholic Church and French power. The French crushed the movement, but uprising served to inspire others. Then came the Scholar Revolt, followed by How Hoa movement. There is one more way to answer this. If you want this, you can also answer like this: that the French introduced Christianity in Vietnam because they wanted some dominance, and they encouraged conversions. This was seen as an interference in the religious belief of the Vietnamese, and they helped to unite them, again a common cause, and instilled a sense of nationalism, Rashtravad. Popular uprising, as I just said took place in Guan and Hai Thien provinces, and thousands of Catholics were killed. Now the Hoa Hao movement, founded by the Hyun Phu So, was an anti-colonial religious movement, and the religious movement strengthened the anti-imperialistic struggle and united the people against the colonialists or colonists. Next one is, how has foreign trade been integrating markets of different countries? Explain with examples. And this has come quite latest. This question is, so foreign trade is integrating markets of different countries. First, let me tell you what this foreign trade is. That when you are in a country here, say country A, say example, let us take India and China. Now, when the trade or vyapar happens, that is, the company here makes some good and sell it to the market in the China, and China also produce something, sell it in India, or they have offices here, they produce here and they sell it. The company belongs to China, likewise. So this foreign trade is integrating markets of different countries. This foreign trade creates an opportunity for the producers to reach beyond the domestic market. That is, if Indian market is there, if this company is producing only for the Indian market, when it has started producing for the international market, so it has the opportunity to reach beyond the domestic market. The producer can sell their products in the market located in other countries, as I just indicated, and it helps for expanding the choice of goods beyond domestic product. So if you are a consumer and you are only given option of, say, the content or the thing which are made in India. So if the Chinese goods are also there, so you have option. You can choose any one of these, which is good in quality and which is cheaper in price. So as a consumer, you have good options now. It is main channel connecting countries. The basic idea of saying this is that this is how countries get connected. People go here and there, people come, they see culture, they see everything, they see the market ethics, like this. And for extensive trade, this is quite helpful whenever this foreign trade is considered. The trading interests attract various trading companies, because if you take the population of India, it's around 134 crore, you can say, and this is around 139, China. Now there is a country, say US country, and this country has say 30 crores of population. Now the company making here something, the consumers are less. But now when this company makes a product and it sell it to 134 or 139 crore of people, you can see that how much product they can sell and what is the revenue of this company. That is why we have the people who are living in, or the companies which are in some advanced country, they are making a lot of money because they are actually selling it to the countries which have higher population. So this we have seen, so I'll just skip it. How do we feel the impact of globalization in our daily life? Explain with examples. This question we have already considered, but since this has been coming again and again, 16, 17, 18, continuously it is coming. So the impact of globalization is Vaishvikaran. Like, see, if you are living in a home, your home, but when you live in a community, you don't only live in your home, you have your neighbors, so there is a community. So this is a community at local level. But when you talk about a globe, you are in India, somewhere in China, say some Australia. So here we have the globalization, how this now the whole globe that is the earth. Earth is a home for everyone. So there is a globalization. Vaishvikaran, because everyone is going here and there, because what you do, you go to your in-laws, you go to your parents, you go to your neighbors, and you call them for a party, you call them for some food, and in any problem you call them. So all these things is happening at this level also, right? So this is the globalization, and globalization and greater competition among producers have been the advantages or advantageous to the consumer, as I just suggested in the previous discussion, that when you have different companies coming for the same product, a consumer has a different options. The greater choice of products and goods are before the consumers, and then the quality also. See, if a company, say you have Toshiba, you have Panasonic, I'm talking about TV, say LG TV. So all these companies are now in front of you. You will go to all these shops, you will see which of the company has lower price, and which of them is providing greater features, and which of them is of good quality. So here you decide that what I'm going to buy. So you get a good quality also, because they cannot say Toshiba, if it has not a good quality, it will not survive in the market. So the quality becomes a prime, you can say, background for any company to survive. And the living standard is increasing, since you are getting this stuff for minimal rupees or minimal amount, and you have so many products. So now the living standard also grows. It emancipates. And foreign investment has increased in many areas. As I just suggested, cell phones, automobiles, electronics, soft drinks, there are so many. And new jobs. If a company from say China comes to you, say Vivo or Oppo, now this company will hire Indian people, and they will sell also. So there will be now marketing guys, there will be some repair also. So all the people here are from India. So China, when it is setting up a company in India, it is actually providing employment to Indians. So China is doing a favor for us. Similarly, if we do it for some other countries, say Australia, so we are favoring that country. We are just investing. Our companies are just investing, but the people there are going to work, and they're going to get job, employment, money, etc. And their living standard will increase, get higher. And several of the units have shut down, rendering many workers jobless. Why? This is the reason why. If there is a country, say India. Now India, because of there are political reasons, people are not very favoring this China. But if you see market wise, that if this company wants to come and you put a lot of rigidness in your rules and regulation, this company will not come, this company will go here. So this country will be benefited. So you will get jobless here. And globalization has also created insecurity of job, because globalization, sometime company may come, sometime company may just pack up and go back. So what will happen to the people out there who are dependent, who have the salary of that company? That may happen. So insecurity of job is sometimes there. Name the state where Narora nuclear power plant is located. So Narora, this is the picture of the Narora nuclear power plant, and this is also again and again repeated. This is in Uttar Pradesh, but where in Uttar Pradesh? We call it as NAPS, Narora Atomic Power Station. And this is a nuclear power plant station, or this is located in Narora, and this is at the district is Zilla is Bulandshahr. Bulandshahr district, Uttar Pradesh. There is a place called Narora where this power plant works. Why is the iron and steel industry called the basic industry? Explain any reason. I'll just give you an example. You have a family and you are kids, like various kids, grandfather, your father, your mother, all those are there. Your chacha, all those things will be, all those people will be there. Now, who is the boss? Grandfather and your father, maybe. Your grandfather is physically active, he is the boss. Otherwise, your father is the boss. Everything will be discussed with him, or he will decide, because he is the bread earning person. Maybe the mother can also be the boss. But if I say that the father is boss in this house, if you take industries, iron and steel is the boss. Iron and steel is the boss, right? So this is why this is boss. Iron and steel industry is the basic industry because it is the industry on which other industry work. This is the feeder industry for all other industry, maximum industry. Okay, so iron and steel industry is called the basic industry because iron and steel industry are the key industry, as all heavy, light, small scale as well as the large scale industry, they are dependent on this iron and steel. Iron and steel is the raw material for other industry. Iron and steel are used to manufacture variety of goods. It starts from very small to very huge, like surgical instrument, defense appliances, electric devices, wires, utensils, electronic goods. And this is considered to be the backbone, Merudand of industrial development of our country. Any country which has good iron and steel industries, it's called prospering, or that is how it's being judged. I'll give you some places here. So here, these are the points where we have the iron and location of steel industry. So some are Tata. One is Tata Steel. This one is Tata Steel's. The first one which was established. This is private, basically TISCO, but it has a name. And we have the Mumbai corporate office here of Tata Steel. Then we have SAIL, Steel Authority of India Limited. And these are the places we have. This is the corporate office. Then we have Bokaro, Burnpur, Durgapur, Bhilai, Chandrapur, Bhadravati, Salem. Right? Coming to Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited, and this is at Vishakhapatnam. Vishakhapatnam Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited. Explain the improvements made by the Indian Railways in its functioning. So this is also coming time and again. So you need to be very well versed about this answer. And there are so many answers here. You know, everyone travels on train, so they know very well what is happening. This is the Indian train. It's a Delhi station right now. Okay. So improvement made by the Indian Railways in its functioning are like this. First, the steam engines are being replaced by electrical engines. Mostly by electrical engines. Where it is not possible, it is diesel engine now. E-ticket, I-ticket facilities are available. That is, the computerization is complete. All the ticketing, all the facility, even you can book food, everything you can do on internet, on your mobile. So everything is computerized. Conversion of meter and narrow gauges into broad gauges. Previously, they were small. This is the distance between these two lines. Okay, and what is the thickness of this rail? So this is how it decide that whether it is a narrow gauge or broad gauge. Now the conversion of this meter and narrow gauge into broad gauges, this has happened. And the rail routes have extensively increased. Whenever their rail budget is produced, every time some government comes, they will announce some or the other train from there, as the source of the destination of their place. So this is how the rail routes are increasing. Better facilities on railway platform, not even in the railway platform. If you go to Indian Rail also, inside this, outside this, this railway platforms have changed entirely. Now they are, a pleasure place. Previously it was not. Then we have metro rail and monorail, though this doesn't come under mainly the Indian Railways, but still we can add it here, that metro rail. These are also being introduced for short distance and for commutation to be made easier. How do pressure groups and movement exert pressure on politics? This we have seen already, and this is coming again and again. So I'll just go through it. This pressure group and movements strengthen democracy because they try to gain public support and sympathies for their goals and their activities by carrying out information campaigns, organizing meetings, and filing petitions. What happens that if government make a policy, government make a policy, and you as a person or a normal ordinary man or me, we are affected by this policy. So what we will do? We will form a pressure group and a movement, Andolan. So this Andolan, if they have number of people, good people are here and they are leading well and public support is there, so they try to gain the public support. When they get a public support, now the government has to get vote, and there are so many people involved here, so they have to listen to this public group or the movement Andolan. They often organize protest activities like strikes. So whenever this strike is involved, the government sees that okay, this is happening, they suffer loss. So that is why this strike is a very good tool to let government know that we are suffering, and that is why we are striking. Sometimes the pressure group are either formed or led by the leaders of the political parties or are act as a extended arms of political parties, as I suggested earlier. Also, you go to university, the university group, the elected members like the secretary or the general secretary, all these are coming from NSUI or ABVP. They all have political backing. Apart from this, you go, there are other places also where you find the political backing. If people say that the panchayats and the panchayats or the village level Chunavi Nikay don't have any politics there, but still they are backed by some of the other political party. Sometimes political party grow out of movements. What happened in Assam, what happened in Tamil Nadu and in Delhi, all these governments have come only on the basis of the movement they started, Andolan they did. Compare the popular struggles of Nepal and Bolivia. So earlier in the questions, we have already seen about Nepal and Bolivia. We have discussed a lot. So the difference we are going to talk about. So let me start with this similarities, but let me show you where it is. See, this is a country in South America. This is Bolivia. This whole region is not very advanced. It's kind of developing states here. This is a picture of Bolivian Andolan or protest, and this is what happened in Nepal. Let me tell you again what happened in Nepal. So there was a Nepal. This was called as the Nepal Second Movement of Democracy. There was a 7-party alliance, SPA we called them. Then the Maoists, which are generally against the government, they use the Shastra. They use armed revolt. They came along with this government, and now they tried to overthrow, or they wanted King Gyanendra to restore democracy back. King Gyanendra finally, after so many things happened, he finally bowed down, and Girija Prasad Koirala, he was made the interim prime minister, and there was a constituent assembly being formed. And this happened because of the water. The municipal water supply was given to the MNC, and MNC started charging exorbitant amount for the water supply. So the similarity is the popular struggles of Nepal and Bolivia are instances of this conflict, right? So political conflict, what happened, and political struggles, what happened. In both the cases, this struggle involved the mass mobilization. If you see here, these are people, and in same way in Nepal also it happened. Lakhs of people came on the street of Kathmandu. Both instances involve critical role of political organization. So there are political organizations which were there. Previously, it was not there with the Bolivian, but finally there was an institution actually. Finally, it was being backed up because this Bolivian did not happen here. Differences is the movement in Nepal was to establish democracy, but in Bolivia the struggle involved claims on an elected democratic government. The democratic government is not providing the proper security of, say, water. That was the thing. And in Nepal, there was no democracy. In Bolivia, struggle was about one specific policy, that is the water policy. As I said, water supply was given to the MNCs, multinational company. They started charging 1,000 bucks for the supply, where 5,000 bucks was the average income. The struggle in Nepal was about the foundations of country's politics, because the relation or relatives of King Gyanendras were killed. All family were killed in some dubious circumstances. Then King Gyanendra came. He took all the power, and then he didn't give any democracy to the country. Now people wanted what? People wanted democracy to be restored. Both these struggles were successful, but their impact was at different levels. Globalization has been advantageous to consumers as well as producers. Support with suitable examples. So this question we have already seen, so I'm just going to skip it. Why are the rules and regulation required in the marketplace? Explain. The rules and regulation are required for consumer protection because first thing is seller usually don't accept responsibility. If they sell a product, that is the sold product, if there is any defect, for instance, you as a consumer who bought say some utensil and you go to the shopkeeper and you say that this is defective, the seller may just ask that you might have taken it was all good when you took it, or he can say just go to the another shop. Exploitation, shoshan of consumers can happen in different ways, like use of faulty weights. For example, the trader can weigh less good than what he's supposed to, because like he is weighing 1 kg and he's only giving you 900 grams. Consumers can be sold this adulterated milawat ka saman, good purposefully. For example, adding color to spices and selling them. This we have seen. If producers are few and consumers are many, producers can exploit lack of competition. For example, big companies, this happens, can sell the product at any price they want because consumers don't have any choice. False information can be advertised, that we have seen on media to attract buyers. For instance, a company is selling baby milk powder advertised for a long time that it was better than mother milk. How can anything be better than mother milk? So consumer groups have been formed and it gives rights to people, consumer, for right to safety, right to information, right to seek readdressal, and right to represent. Name the state where Kandla seaport is located. So here is the place, Gujarat. Gujarat is the state where Kandla seaport is located. This is the picture. Let me show you where exactly it is. This is the Kandla Port Trust, right? And let me show you this port. Actually, this is one of the oldest port. So this is the picture, and Gujarat is the state. Name the place where the movement of indigo planters, started. So this is Champaran. Now let me show you where it is. This region, if you see, this is the Champaran area. If you want to locate it, here is Patna, here is Gorakhpur. So this is Champaran Ilaka area. Champaran, which is in Bihar, is the place associated with the movement of indigo planters. Champaran movement was held under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi ji in 1917. Please remember, it's 1917. The farmers of the Champaran district were forced to cultivate indigo only. Neel kehte the isko. So they wanted to grow something else, but they were forced to grow only indigo. Describe any 4 merits of road transportation. So what are the merits or benefits of road transportation? First, the roads need less capital, less money than railways or other mode of transport. Road transport provides door-to-door service. That is, if this is your house, the train or aircraft will come here. But if you have road transport, you can come up to right in front of your door. The road transport provide flexible service to people also and the material also. That is, transportation of good and the commutation of people, both are flexible. Road transport is useful for small distances, and road transport is helpful in production of perishable goods. Why perishable goods? As it facilitates the distribution of perishable goods from point of production to point of consumption. That is, if something like say milk or any other thing which is perishable, so where it is produced through road transport, you can take it to the destination where it is required. Roads can negotiate or are negotiable for higher gradients of flow, as such can traverse mountains such as the Himalayas. Now this is a question which or this is a point of debate also, but we have seen that even in the Ladakh area or any mountainous area, we find the road transport, like the bus, like the truck, like the cars, etc. They are moving, they can move even for a high gradient, that is the slope. If you want to run a train on this slope, it won't be possible. Which government body supervises the functioning of formal sources of loans in India? Explain. It's RBI, Reserve Bank of India, supervises the functioning of formal sources of loan. This is Reserve Bank of India office. Explain any three effects of non-cooperation movement on the economy of India. So non-cooperation movement, how does it affected or how it affected the economic front? And it affected immensely. The foreign goods were boycotted by Indians, the liquor shops were picketed, and foreign clothes were burnt hugely in mass manner. The import of foreign clothes actually halved. Between 1921 and 1922, the value dropping from 102 crores to 57 crore rupees. As this boycott movement spread, people used only Indian clothes and began to discard the foreign clothes. And because of this, the production of Indian textile mills and handloom actually it went up largely. What is a trade barrier? Why did Indian government put up trade barriers after independence? Explain. So in the earlier questions we have seen this, but we'll just discuss here. This trade barrier is a stoppage. This is a restriction. So it's a kind of restriction imposed by government so as to regulate free trade, thereby regulating exchange. So there has to be a barrier. That is how it is being put. The country decides what goods would come, how much, and these are imposed for three reasons. First, that in order to support the indigenous producers. Second is developing the infrastructure. So developing the infrastructure. And third is the progress of the country. Progress. For example, tax on imports. Tax on imports. I'll tell you a reason why. After colonization of British for over 200 years, India's whole infrastructure development came to an end. The time between 1950s and 1960s was known as the period of development liberalization. Of that point of time, would not have allowed small infant industries to compete with or deal with the giant MNCs, and no infrastructure development would have been possible. Therefore, all developed countries at the initial step had imposed trade barriers, and they allowed the indigenous market to grow. I'll give you more reason here. See, if you want, this is a country, now you want something not to come to your country, what will you do? You will increase the taxes. Increase the taxes, government taxes. Now, if you want certain good stuff or material to come inside your country, then you relax the taxes, or even you don't take the taxes. So this is how the trade barrier works. Explain how dynastic succession is a major challenge for political parties in India. Now, what happens here is, see, all these big leaders which we know, everyone has a dynasty involved in dynastic politics. That means they have their kids. These are the kids, and these means the children who are now the politician. So the political party is held by these people, like he's Anurag Thakur, and he is now the state, means he's finance minister, that is the state. He is helping Nirmala Sitharaman. Now he is the son of a famous CM of Himachal Pradesh. So everyone you see here, they are following the dynasty. So this dynastic succession is a serious challenge for political parties, since most of the procedure of the parties are not transparent. It is opaque. That is, the leaders can favor those which are close to them, and nobody would know. But everyone knows. People don't talk about that. But everyone knows that these leaders are no leaders. They are actually the kids of the leaders, and they are holding the command of the party. Most of the parties have all the top members from one family. This doesn't give a fair chance to the ordinary workers. like Mulayam Singh Yadav, his son Akhilesh Yadav. Now he is now taking care of the Samajwadi Party, and most of the decisions are taken by the Yadav family only. This is a challenge to the democracy because people with less experience or popular support can also come to power. We can say that someone may be very good in politics, but how can we decide that they are also good? How can you decide that they are also very good? Explain the idea of satyagraha according to Gandhiji. So Gandhiji, when he came back to India from South Africa in January 1915, he started, which was because he has already done this in South Africa. So it is a novel method of mass agitation. What is the agitation? The tools are truth and non-violence. That is, no violence, ahimsa, and nothing but only the truth. So under this, if the cause was true, if you are walking or if you are protesting or you're doing something for the truth and struggle was against some injustice, it did not require force to win the battle. Oppressive, that is, he had to be persuaded to see the truth, rather using force to accept it. That is, if you are true and if you are fighting against some injustice, then you don't need force, you didn't need power, you don't need anything which comes under violence. You don't need violence. He considered this method of ahimsa or satyagraha. Satyagraha means satyagraha. Satyagraha. Satya means truth. Satya means truth, and agraha means asking. So that is, we are asking for the truth. He considered this method of ahimsa, non-violence, to bring unity. In this battle, the truth was bound to triumph. We have seen always the hero of a movie wins, villain always lose. So it was a movement of active resistance. It calls for great courage and determination to show love. Who is those people who are oppressed? Or that is, he had to be persuaded to see the truth rather than forced to accept it. Environmental degradation has been seen everywhere. Explain any three values that can help to prevent environmental degradation. So environmental degradation is caused by different pollution. There are different ways. We are cutting the trees. So first is pollution, main is pollution. Then the destruction of wildlife and also the vegetation. That is one, or forest, vegetation and forests. So there are so many ways these things are happening. So the step to minimize the environmental degradation which are caused by industrial development. First is, whatever waste or every liter of water which is discharged by the industry, it pollutes 8 times the quantity of fresh water. So we can minimize the use of water for processing by again reusing that water and recycling it in successive stages. And rainwater harvesting can be done where water is scarce. So we can use rainwater harvesting kind of method. When the very hot water, especially from the thermal power plants, etc., and the effluents which are toxic sometimes, when they are released in the aquatic environment, that is rivers and ponds, they need to be treated well. And the matter which are coming in the air, this needs to be filtered by fitting smokestacks to factories with electrostatic precipitators or fabric filters or scrubbers and inertial separators. So whatever coming outside from the industries needs to be stopped. Anything which comes out and creates pollution. Smoke can be reduced by using oil and gas instead of coal in the factories. And machinery and equipment can be used, and generators should be fitted with silencers. Otherwise, it is creating a lot of the noise pollution. Almost all machinery can be redesigned to increase energy efficiency and reduce noise. How is democratic government known as responsive government? Explain with an example. So government or democratic government is known as a responsive government. It is responsive to the need and expectation of the citizens, because democracy means all but citizens, means only citizen is the boss, and this citizen for the country, like this, means for only citizen has chosen or elected the government, and now the government is a slave actually to the citizens. Citizens are the master. For example, the Right to Information Act was passed by Government of India in 2005, and by this act almost all citizens can have the right to be informed about the goods and services they have bought, and also what the information about what the government is doing. Government offices, they may know what is happening. And this act was passed with respect to the need of the citizen, because people wanted it. What is government doing? We want to know it. Therefore, the democratic government produces a responsive government where people can easily access the decision taken by it. And this phenomena is known as transparency. See, I'll give you a very layman type of definition, that whenever your father asks you, you always respond. Always respond. But when you ask your father, does he respond? That is, you want something which is legitimate. You don't want mobile, you don't want to go for fun. You want some book or say something which is required by you. Now your father is listening. Your father is a responsive government. You need a justifiable, anything which is justifiable. Your father is not turning deaf ears, or he is trying to turn deaf ears on you. He is not listening. Your father is not a responsive government. Explain any 5 social and administrative reforms introduced by Napoleon in the regions under his control. So Napoleon, after coming to power, though he is considered to be a killer, in history that is the idea we get. But after coming to the power, he introduced certain reforms that were quite efficient and rational also, means logical also. The Civil Code of 1804, also known as Napoleonic Code, establishes all privileges based on birth, created equality before law, and also secured the right to property. That is, everyone is equal. There is no special. If you are not special, if you are born in some say family. This code spread to all countries, including Switzerland, Italy, and Germany. Napoleon has simplified administrative division and abolished the feudal system. Samajwadi is this Samrajyawadi Vyavastha, or you can say Samantawadi Vyavastha. Feudal is Samantawadi. He freed the peasant from serfdom and manorial, that is Samant and the Dasatwa, because people were working like slaves. So he freed these peasants or poor farmers from this. Guild restrictions were removed from the towns, and transport and communication networks were improved. So peasants, artisans, workers, businessmen enjoyed the freedom that were gained due to these Napoleonic uniform laws, standardized measures, and weights. So common national currency system that facilitated the movement and exchange of goods from one region to another. And this standardized measure, that is for kilogram or whatever length or meter or weight, there was standardized, and there was a common now national currency. How do the means of transport and communication play an important role in the economic development of the country? Explain. So either you talk about the transport or you talk about communication. For economic development, they both are important. First is the mobility of factors of production. That is, transport and communication are improved, quick and cheap. If they will increase the mobility factors of production. If they are not, you will not get the proper raw materials on time or the products to be delivered at some point. So the reward for all the factors will become equal. Then the stable prices. The developed system of transport and communication helps in stabilizing prices of the commodities throughout the country. Supply of raw materials, as I just suggested, and the goods, manufactured goods. Due to quick and cheap transport system, raw materials can be easily supplied to factories on lower cost. Even from outside the country also, it may reach in time. And then when the industries are producing goods from the factories, goods can be easily transported to the markets if transport is efficient. Otherwise, let me tell you again, this industry needs raw material, it does some processing, and it produces goods. So this raw material has to be brought in and through transportation and communication only, and this goods has to be sold in the market. So this can only be done if you have good this transport and communication. So we have explained any three reasons faced by iron and steel industry in India. As we know, iron and steel industry is the backbone of any country's industrial development or economical development. So though India is an important producer of iron and steel in the world, we are not able to perform to our full potential. Why? Because of the high cost. See, the limited availability of coking coal, as the amount of coking coal is limited, the cost in India is high. Therefore, the industry faces difficulty buying it. The coal is the basic need for iron and steel industry. If it is expensive, then this industry will suffer. And the low productivity of labor, mostly we have unskilled labor, irregular supply of energy, sometimes electricity works, sometimes the power is not there. So there is an irregular supply of electricity in India, so that the work becomes more difficult. The infrastructure is not very good, poor. The technological development in India is less as compared to other countries. Since we are a developing country. And there is a need to allocate resources for research and development to produce steel more competitively to raise their standard to meet international levels. So even the technological development and the workability has to be increased, and the cost of raw materials should be cheap. Then only the steel and iron industry can prosper. Now we have some geography map topics. So iron and steel plant. Geography map topics. These are question. This question is asked, and we have to show where it is. Iron and steel plant. So let me show you. This is Tata Steel, Jamshedpur, Tisco here. These are all under SAIL, Steel Authority of India Limited. So we have this Bokaro, Burnpur, Durgapur, Rourkela, and Bhilai, Chandrapur, Bhadravati, and Salem. Then there is Visakhapatnam, Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited. Other map question is seaport. You have to name and show in the map all the seaports. So these are the seaports here. Here we have Kandla, Deen Dayal Port Trust. Then the major ones are these red ones. Okay, there are others also, but let me just tell you the major ones, like the Mumbai and Jawaharlal Nehru Port. Then we have Panji, and basic is Marmagao. Mangalore Port Trust, very famous one. Kochi, Tuticorin, Chennai, and this is Kamarajar Port, Ennore, Visakhapatnam, Paradweep, and Haldia. Others are also there. Other also you can see. So these are the major seaport, red one. The blue one are intermediate seaports. So we have to only highlight the major seaports, as I suggested here. International airports, and this is recently being asked. These are the map questions. So let me tell you first, these are the international airports. I will not talk about the domestic airport. This is just for your reference. So international airports, let us see. New Delhi, Ahmedabad, Kolkata, Guwahati, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Visakhapatnam, Bangalore, Chennai, Cochin, and Tiruvananthapuram. Nuclear power plants. So here we have nuclear power plants also, and sometimes it is asked the thermal power plants also. So both I try to show you. So all these triangles are nuclear power plant. Narora, Kakrapara. This is Tarapur. Then we have Kalapakkam. Right? These are the major ones. Another these rounds are the thermal power plants. There are many. Software technology parks. So these are the software parks Right, it starts from Srinagar, Shimla, Dehradun, Mohali, Delhi, Noida, Jaipur, Lucknow, Kanpur, Gandhinagar, Indore, Kolkata, Guwahati, Bhubaneswar, Navi Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore, Mysuru, Manipal. Iron ore mines. So iron ore mines, so I'll show you these mines. These are in round shape. These are iron ore mines. So this is East Singhbhumi. Here we have Durg, Chhattisgarh, Kionjhar in Odisha. We have North Goa and South Goa, Bellary, Chikmagaluru, Ongole, Guntur. These are iron ore mines here. Now we have history map topics. So the place where the Indian National Congress session was held. So this question is asked again and again. So let me tell you all the positions here. It starts, you can see the dates also. Okay. So December 1885, it's Bombay. Nagpur 1920, Calcutta again 1920, then Madras 1927 and Lahore 1929. And there are the questions certainly asked. So the place which is associated with the movement of indigo planters, it is Champaran. Name the place where cotton mill workers organized Satyagraha, it's Ahmedabad. And name the city where Jallianwala Bagh incident occurred. And here, Amritsar. So this is all about the question and answer, which are very important for the upcoming board exams. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.